In addition to customizing chart elements, we've got grid lines. When I hit my green plus to control chart elements, I can go to grid lines and I can hit the black triangle. Here I can turn off any grid lines I don't want and turn on any grid lines I do want. In fact, if I roll over them, it does tend to show me what they look like. And if there's something of interest, then I can just turn them on. So I might tick this option here. And now I've got primary, minor horizontal lines. In addition to customizing your grid lines, you've also got the option in chart elements of legend. My legend currently resides on the right hand side of my screen. But if I hit the black triangle to the right of legend, I can move it from being on the right to the top, to the left, to the bottom, and even more options. But I might actually turn mine off, so I'll untick legend, and that turns something off, such as legend in this case. You can also add data labels. Now I don't want data labels everywhere, and that's exactly what I'll get if I don't choose a particular series. So I'm going to click on this series here, which is target, and then go to data labels. I'll hit the triangle, the black triangle to the right of data labels, so I can control the placement of those data labels. I'd like my data labels to be above the line, so I'll click the option above, and here are my data labels above the line. Data labels are very good when you want to show values actually on the chart, and particularly if you have a pie chart, data labels are very good for showing percentages. Besides data labels, I also like data tables, and I'm going to show my data table with legend keys, which is why I got rid of my legend earlier. By turning on the data table, I now have a data table at the bottom of my chart, and it includes a legend, which made it unnecessary for me to have the legend turned on anymore. Now what I'd like to show you is something called a trend line, but I'd like to use chart 1 for a trend line, so I'll go back to chart 1. We can have a trend line per series, so I'm going to click on a profit bar, which is a green bar, and I'd like to create a trend line for my green profit series. If I then go to Chart Tools Design or go to my green plus, I can choose Trendline and more importantly the black triangle to the right. And I'm going to go into More Options. When I go into More Options, the Trendline task pane appears on the right hand side of my screen, and I'm under this option here, which is Trendline Options. I want to show a linear trend line, but I have the option of exponential, logarithmic, polynomial, power, or moving average. I'm going to stick with linear, and I want to forecast forward 3 periods. I'd also like to display the equation on the chart, which is the linear equation that was used to derive this line. So this trend line is basically a linear trend line that is saying based on the growth of profit for those 3 years there, if it continued at that same rate for the next 3 years, this is where the profit would be. In addition to trend lines, you can also add error bars, and let's say I want to add an error bar. I'll just close this task pane for my my expenses. Perhaps not all my expenses are in yet, so I'll click an expenses bar. I may still be collecting some of my invoices, so I want to indicate to the reader that the expenses could be plus or minus $500. If I click on this particular series and then go for my green plus for my chart elements, I can then ask for error bars and hit the black triangle to the right and go into More Options. Here I can have a trend line going in both directions rather than just plus or minus, and I can also ask for a cap. At the moment, it automatically gives me a fixed amount of $500, plus or minus $500. Or I could change it to percentage, and that's plus or minus 5%. Or I could do a standard deviation, or I could even run off and choose a custom value if I had data in my spreadsheet. But I'm going to go fixed value, plus or minus, and let's change this, plus or minus $300. And there's my tab. And there's my error bars, plus or minus $300. So error bars are quite good as well. Now if I need to, let me just close that, if I need to move this chart and put it with the data in the sheet cord chart, you can easily do this, and you don't cut and paste necessarily. You can go to Chart Tools Design, and then you've got a button to the right here in the location group called Move Chart. And if I click the Move Chart button, I can make it as an object in any of the current sheets that are in my workbook. I'm going to make it as an object inside of the sheet called chart, which is what it's based on, and I'll click OK. So now my chart is sitting with my data as an object in the sheet called chart, and I've lost chart 1 because it's not its own sheet anymore. If I want to put it back and move it back to being its own sheet, I click on the chart. In the Chart Tools Design tab in the ribbon, I'll go for the Move Chart button again, and I'll make it as a new sheet and put it back to chart 1, and OK. And so it's back in being its own sheet called chart 1. So you can easily move a sheet. As far as printing a chart, let me just click on a chart and basically go Print Preview. If your chart is an object inside of a sheet, let's do that again. Move Chart, put it as an object inside of the sheet called Chart, and OK. If I was to print preview this scenario here, Print Preview, you'll see that the printout would be the data and the chart, because the chart's not clicked on. But if I escape out of Print Preview and click on the chart and then go Print Preview, you'll find it'll only print the chart. So if you have a number of charts as objects in a sheet, if you click on the chart itself, it will only print the chart. If you click away from the chart, it'll print the entire sheet. And I'll move it back. Design, Move Chart, put it back as an object in its own sheet called Chart 1. And there it is back in its own sheet. Oops, and just move it in order. Okay. There are various chart layouts as well. Let me go back to Chart 2, for example. We have got styles, and these are listed here. There's a large collection of styles you can choose from. You can rest on them just to see what they will look like without actually changing your chart. You've also got the ability to change colors, so you've got all sorts of palettes that you can choose from. And you've also got some quick layouts. So these are all just a matter of resting and deciding on a layout or a style or a color palette that you most enjoy. Now I'd like to show you something called Sparklines, and so I'm going to go back to chart. In fact, I'm going to go to charting for this. Sparklines are small mini charts, I guess, inside of a sheet. Let's start in the sheet called charting by clicking on the cell B12, and actually let's right click the row number 12 and change the row height to say 50. Then click in B12. Now what I'd like to do is go Insert in the ribbon, and you'll find you've got a Sparklines group, and click Column. This little window appears and asks you for the range where the data is. So what I'd like to do here is I'd like to highlight B5 to B8, and OK. And so it's created a little column Sparkline. Now the beauty of this is I can drag the thin black cross to the right, and it'll create a sparkline for each year. Now if I click away and then click on one of those sparklines, you can see a blue border around the outside, which means that this is a group. And if you want to treat them as individuals and customize each one individually, you're going to have to ungroup them. So I'm going to highlight this group, and up here in the Sparkline Tools Design tab, I'm going to ungroup them. Now they're individuals. The blue border doesn't appear anymore. And so now what I can do is I can start customizing the color of each so that they stand out more. So I might make this one red, I might make this one green, make this one orange, and so you can actually customize each one individually. Purple, and just one more. That one. What you can also do is you can accentuate certain parts of the sparkline. For example, there are tick boxes here. I can accentuate the high point, and so notice the high point is a different color as I turn it off and on from the rest of them. I can also accentuate the low point, though you can't really see that very clearly, but it's doing the same thing. I can accentuate the first point in a different color, and I can accentuate the last point in a different color. So you've got all sorts of different options here. You can also click on a particular sparkline and change it to a line, and change this one to a line. You then can choose a different style for that line, and you can turn on things like markers. So now I've got markers for that line, and I can turn on markers for this line, and I can change the style of that too. So you can then continue to customize your sparklines. So sparklines are mini charts, just giving you a quick impression of whether the data is going up or going down.